Thank you for joining us on this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel Olawale. I have with me a special guest this afternoon, an attorney, a mentor, someone who has been a pillar in the community, someone who has made it his life callings to mentor young attorneys, to show them the way, and to show them how it's done. He is truly a gentleman, Mr. Byron Potts. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's nice having you too. You've been in the Columbus area as an attorney forever. At least you've started your practice since 1988. What was it like?
Well, 1988, it was when I first started at the Attorney General's office. I did a year at the Attorney General's office, but I knew I had to go out on my own. But I just began my practice of law uh, at the Attorney General's office. But however, prior to that, I had been working in the legal community for 11 years. I worked as a bailiff and a law clerk for the Court of Claims of Ohio. I started there in 1979, January of 1979. So I had been involved in the legal community for a substantial period of time. So it wasn't new to me. I wasn't intimidated by it. I had met through all those years a lot of judges, a lot of attorneys, and because they had to come through the court, and I was in the courtroom all the time. So that's where I got my start. And being third, I'm from Columbus also. So I was born and raised in Columbus. I went to school here. I left and went to Bowling Green undergraduate school, but on the most part, I'm here. I'm a Columbusite.
Yeah. Just as if you're born to practice law in Columbus. I believe you are also the first Black bailiff, either in Franklin County or in Ohio.
I was the first Black bailiff and law clerk in the Court of Claims of Ohio. The Court of Claims, as you well know, is a branch of the Supreme Court. I was appointed by Chief Justice Frank Celebrezzi at the time, and I was the first Black bailiff slash law clerk for the Court of Claims of Ohio.
Yeah. So you've continuously been a trendsetter. Thank you for, being the trailblazer because you opened the doors for, later, for people like me that came later, 20, 30 years later after you got started. Because I can imagine how it was back then. Even right now, we still don't have enough attorneys of color, not to mention 20 or 30 years ago. Thank you.
Right.
You
It
do.
was there was some though. It wasn't uh as many as we have today, but there were still a lot of individuals, not a lot, but there were some out here practicing and doing stuff. So yes.
Yeah. And you're a veteran criminal defense attorney, so you've tried and handled different kinds of criminal cases. So, over the years, I'm sure you've seen justice and injustice and quasi injustice in the system. So, what does criminal justice reform mean to you? When people say we
Well,
want criminal justice reform, what does that mean to you?
what it means to me is that we need to continue to push forward for an equal playing field, that everybody is treated the same, where you don't have individuals that are people of color that can't get good representation because of money. They are unable to get reasonable bonds. That's one of the things that bonds that they can't get out of jail because they don't have money. to post bonds, and a lot of, I believe that they use bonds as being punitive as opposed to secure appearances. That's one of the challenges that we have. Most of the people of color have to fight their cases when they're locked up. If you see the difference, the other individuals are able to get out because, one, they get lower bonds, they don't get arrested, they issue summonses, they issue summons to the individuals, and they have more money. Money should not be the issue, is whether a person is guilty or innocent. But money is an issue on the most part in almost every case. Do you have the money to do the things that you need to do to be get justice in here? And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about bond and the amount of bond that is set, someone on the other side might say someone who has the resources and can easily post bond may and that has that has property or whose family has property has a less likelihood of coming back or appearing in court. Whereas someone who has nothing to lose with a low bond might abscond. What do you have to say to arguments like that?
Well, you have to look at all the factors, but it shouldn't be whether you're affluent or not. Bond is not a tool for the courts to use to punish a person, and it's just unfair because you own property, and you know the disparities when they sell and give loans to individuals that they can buy property. It's been a historic discrimination, redlining, and doing all that. So you look at that, it is um, causing problems that we have, because if you don't have another element that they look at, especially the bail bondsman on writing bonds, if you don't own property, they're very unlikely to write the bond for you. So you have to get individuals who will be your surety, and they have to have real estate. We've been discriminated in with real estate for years. It's historic. So that just makes the system unfair to us, just with those elements and issues that you're having. You think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I understand. So you think it's a catch-22. So regardless of what you do, historically, as Black people, we've been discriminated against when it comes to buying property. And now, if property is a condition for bond, there's no way we can win. So do you think it should be codified that maybe bonds have to be set by the judiciary? But then
Yeah,
how
but
are we
well,
to know that it's
the
not going to be
bond
discriminatory?
the bond is being set by the judges, but the challenge that we have is, it's just, if you look at the type of charges and the amounts of bonds that they're setting on these cases. Now, they're part of the reform. The criminal justice reform is to deal with these bond issues, that they should not be having these high bonds, and they should be equally applied across the board. That's one of the criminal justice reform issues that are being addressed, is how the courts set bonds. So it's very
Yeah.
important. It's much easier to defend yourself in a case when you're out than when you're sitting in waiting for a court.
Exactly. I think I take the last question back. I wanted to say the bond to be set maybe by the codified by the legislators.
Yeah, well, that's kind of it. I still see why you take the bond on a case by case basis, but they should start with the presumption that the bond should be low, unless there's a serious risk of flight and there's a threat to the community. And those are the elements they need to look at but the factors that they use to allow, now you got the judges that are setting the bonds and the bail bondsmen that write the bonds if they're surety bonds. And a lot of these bail bondsmen will not write people bonds if they can't get a person that has real estate, owns real estate, to be the surety. So those are the, now if we want to eliminate something, eliminate that. That's what we could eliminate, because that is inherently prejudicial to African Americans, black people, and people of color, because we don't get the opportunity to own property as much as the majority community.
Yeah, you're right on that. Last summer, we witnessed civil rights protest, instigated by the death of George Floyd in Minnesota. I think we had some of those protests here in Columbus. There was a call for police reform. How do you connect just doing police reform from just the whole reforming the whole criminal justice system? Can
Yeah,
we, is it possible to have police reform without even also reforming the courts, or we just have to do everything all together?
I think they all go together. You can't separate them. The police reform one is that how they profile and deal with us, talk to us uh, negatively. They come in our community and treat the people in the African American community differently than they do in the majority community, the suburban areas. So the reform is community policing. If you're talking about community policing, they'll be less likely to arrest the individual and make them defend themselves and be locked up. And they try to intervene before the criminal activity happens, just like they do out in the suburbs. If you look at, that's community policing. But see, we don't require, and the law does not allow you to require a, a, a police officer to live in the community. You can't force them to do that. However, there are ways that you can build incentives so they can be living in the community and be a part of the community. So we talk about policing. Community policing, uh, there, if you have community policing, it is reduction in crime, reduction in people being arrested. So you look at that helps reform the criminal justice system, because you have less people from the inner city going in and being arrested, because if you have the police involved in the community and they know who they are, and they are more likely to work together as opposed to be adversaries, you will have less crime. You will have less people going through the criminal justice system. So they both work together hand in hand. You cannot separate them.
Can't separate them. And I think I do agree with you, because if you have officers who are used to the community, they don't have to live there. So it wouldn't have to be us versus them situation, which often happens, right?
Well, that's
And
what's going on right now. Most of these officers come into the city from either suburban areas or from these smaller towns outside of the area, and they are afraid of the people that live in the inner city. They're not used to that. They have not been around people, African Americans, and they have very limited contact doing that.
yeah, doesn't that kind of exemplify the kind of, even when it comes to the way we handle foreign affairs, because we have boots in places like where brown people live, where we are fighting for freedom over there so that they don't have to come over here. Isn't it like the police that lives in the suburbs are going into these neighborhoods trying to pretend as if they're trying to fight the crime over there so that it shouldn't migrate to the suburbs?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same situation. I agree 100%. Same exact situation, but on a broader basis, on a
on a broader
wider
basis.
scale. Yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
Yeah, yeah. In spite of the protests last year, because a lot of people came out en masse, even though it was in the middle of the pandemic. Here in Columbus, there have still been two unharmed Black men killed by law enforcement. What is going on? Are they tone deaf or what is it?
Well, I believe that there's a part of it that some of these individuals are racist from the beginning, getting on the force. Now, I know some police officers. I have friends that are police officers, retired police officers, great people, and they really care about the community. But there are individuals that join that force, I truly believe, that are racist when they get on the force, and then we still, and then it comes out on how they do their job, and they look at those type of people, and I'm not talking about every police officer, but those type of people that get on the force, they look at, and they don't care, they look at the individuals that they are policing as animals. They don't look at them as human. So it's easier for them to kill somebody that they don't look to as a human being. They treat them as animals. They look at them as animals, and then it's easier for them to pull the trigger and kill a person. Now, if I was a police officer, it would take so much for me to have to shoot an individual now, especially going through all the scrutiny that you're going to have to go through now. It just doesn't. And but just these two last people that were killed, it's like they didn't even care. They didn't think about it. They're so used to getting off with the qualified immunity that they have, and the prosecutors not willing to prosecute them, or um, what we really need to do is prosecute them for murder charges, and 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 present the cases to the grand jury. Really present the cases to the grand jury. There was an article today in the Columbus Dispatch that Gary Tyack, they interviewed him about prosecuting police officers, and how he, as a prosecutor, he is the new Franklin County prosecutor, and how he was going to prosecute these police officers. Now, he's not going to give them a free pass. Now, we're going to hold him to that. But he has said that it's in the paper. They and the Fraternal Order of Police, that's the union that represents the police, they were highly upset at what he said when he talked to them, saying that he was going to prosecute. If they are doing wrong, they're not only going to get subjected to civil liability, but criminal liability. And I'm looking forward to seeing the individuals that he has presenting these cases to the grand jury dealing with these police officers. Technically, I kind of believe that they shouldn't, there's a conflict of interest because they work with the police every day. And then you want them to prosecute them. But I hope he's a man of his word and follows through with that.
Yeah. I think when it comes to issues of law enforcement officers overstepping their boundaries, I think there should be special prosecutors set up to investigate and to prosecute instead of having the regular county prosecutors take on the case. What do you think?
I, I agree with that, but see, you still have to. Uh, that's a trick. That's a in disguise, because the challenge you have is who appoints the special prosecutor. Where do they come from? That's the challenge that you have, because if the prosecutor who is the Franklin, say it would be the Franklin County prosecutor, and they get to pick someone to prosecute the case, they get to bring the person in. Wouldn't that be biased on and them selecting the person that comes in, the special prosecutor? How do they determine that? Now that's what it should. If they have a special prosecutor, it should be done by an independent panel. someone that is not from the county prosecutor or the area where that person is. And it should, that's why the Citizens Review Board and citizen involvement is so important. And these citizens have to be independent people. So
Yes.
what I and if you let that prosecutor appoint the special prosecutor, then you might as well have that prosecutor present the case to the grand jury anyway, because it's still a biased selection.
Hmm. With Columbus setting up a civilian review board, do you think selecting a special prosecutor or recommendation for prosecution should be part of the job or part of their duties?
No, I not with the review. If the citizen review board is charged with looking at the shooting or whatever the police officer did, then they shouldn't be involved in appointing the prosecutor. It should be a separate group, separate individuals to appoint the special prosecutor. But it shouldn't be the prosecutor that's in that area, that is in that jurisdiction. They should not be the one that gets to appoint the special prosecutor, because all they're going to do is appoint someone that they know, a friend, something, and that's still going to be biased.
Yeah. Yeah, we have this counter argument anytime you bring up criminal justice reform or police reform. You have people talk about why you're not talking about black on black violence. What do you have to say to people like that who says that if we keep killing each other, why do we get mad when we get shot or killed by police?
I have a real issue with. I just did a forum on black killings in Columbus, and I have a problem with our community getting so much in an uproar over the police shootings, and we are not in an uproar of all these killings. There was 177 killings last year. 75% of those killings were black people, African Americans, and we are not. We should be marching and being as mad as when George Floyd and all those people were killed. We should be as upset or even more about the people in our community killing each other. And we have to do something. We keep asking for the government to intervene and to help us. We have to start stepping forward in our own community. Black professionals have to start volunteering to let people see them in the community, and we need to start talking to these young people, mentoring and bringing them in, and helping them educate themselves about what's going on their history and what's going on, instead of just being individuals that go, they're scared to go in the community. They live in the suburbs and they don't give back to the community. So we have to start solving our own problems. We a lot of these young people, I believe, one is self-hatred, because if we look back how they taught us to hate ourselves, so it makes it easier for them to kill each other. They have, if they're not, they have no hesitancy to killing one another. Where are they getting these guns? We need to talk about eliminating these guns, and instead of signing a bill for stand your ground, the governor should have denied that, but he said he was going to do it, so he did it. But I have a problem with us killing us, and then the people that can help solve that problem and eliminate that are not stepping forward. We're asking for Mayor Ginther and those type of people to help. I don't. Yeah, they can help, but I believe it has to come from the community. The black community has to heal itself, not asking for someone else to keep doing that for us.
Thank you. Don't you think that the violence that we see in some of our communities has to do with poverty? Because there's a correlation between poverty and criminality. And even, when people live in a place that seems like a war zone, life has less values and become meaningless. So it's easier to take life. And even you that you're living to, you're probably thinking, no, I probably wouldn't live to see 21. So what do I have to live for? When you have nothing to live for, you have nothing to lose.
Exactly. I agree with that too. It's not just one problem that we have in the community that's causing these killings. Poverty is just as important as the self-hatred, the mental process that they have. The poverty is terrible in the community. And one of the things, because if you had hope, you would not want to participate in this type of activity. Hope meaning I have a good job, or I have a business that I can run. I need to learn how to start my own businesses that we have. They have to have some education so they can start developing their own businesses, because most of these companies are not going to hire them, or if they hire them, they're going to hire them on low level positions, and those positions are being eliminated very quickly. They're using robots and stuff now on the type of jobs that you used to be able to get, and you made good money. So they're not making money, so they don't have hope. So what we have to be able to do is give them some hope. How do we give them some hope? We train them. We give them jobs. But the problem I have is giving somebody a job. I would rather teach a person how to develop their own business and come up with some ideas. And our education system needs to change, because they teach you how to get a job as opposed to developing your own business and working for yourself. Because if you work for yourself, you will be the one in control of hiring and firing, as opposed to working for someone else. And we need to change that mentality. And I think as Black professionals, I have a duty to go out and train people how to start their own business, how to work a business, and what to do. So that's one of the main reasons why, when I bring people in as associates with me, what I tell them, the goal is not for you to work for me forever. I'm not trying to do that. The goal is to teach you how to start your own practice. I got a duty to do that. And then I believe that if I teach you, you have a duty to teach someone else. And that's what we
Wow.
need to do. We need to start teaching these young people not only practicing law, but I'm talking about developing their own businesses, how to set it up, what to do. Because if they're out there doing this criminal activity, specifically drug dealing, you have your own business there. If you're going to be successful, you have to be able to do math, you have to be able to do customer service, you have to be able to do all that type of stuff. If you use that same energy to do a legitimate business, you could be successful. But a lot of them don't believe that they can do that. They don't believe it. They have no hope.
Yeah, and thank you for doing what you do. I can testify to you encouraging other people on how to start their practice, because when I was starting out and as a young attorney, I see you in court, you give me advice, you just give your 2 cents, so I can testify to that. So now talking about these young Black men and women in our neighborhoods, it's one thing to give them hope. It's another thing for them to be willing to take up that burden of thinking they're worthless, because some of these traumas too are generational in nature, because you get used to the condition or situation that you're in. If you don't see someone else who can lift you out of it, how can we change this mindset?
Well, that's the first thing that I talked about. That's that self hatred, because they think they're worthless. Because and what I don't like is we start our history with slavery, and that's not our history. And you know it as well as I know it, that what we have to do is let them know where we really came from and the type of people that we came from, and start encouraging them. We are the ones that created math, medicine, and science. African people did. The people that look like us did. So, but what we always let them do to us is saying our history started with slavery, and it didn't. And if you know what they taught this in slavery, they taught you how to hate what you look like, that you are not worth anything. You are an animal. That's what they taught us. And I believe that is part of the reason why it's so easy for us to kill us to commit crimes against each other. It's so easy for them to do that because they feel worthless. Worthless with no hope is a terrible, tragic situation. You
Amen.
must We must educate these young. Part of the education is teaching them our real history, teaching them how valuable they are. I believe one of the worst things they ever did to us is give us welfare, integration, because it made we have instead of what welfare should be a short period of time. It shouldn't be generations of individuals, because what it is you don't have hope. You're reliant on somebody giving you something all the time, as opposed to you creating. You're instead of being a giver, you're a taker. You're always expecting that somebody needs to give you something, and it's generations of what we're having here. We have generations of people that are on welfare that don't have any hope or aspirations to do greater things. We have to start intervening in that and teaching that that is a situation where it should be temporary. It is not to be from one generation to the other. So that's a big problem that we as African Americans have in our community.
Mm. But I just there's a comment here that say, in fairness, white people are the primary recipients of welfare. So more white people get welfare than black people. How come they don't have that same sense of high homicide in poor white communities?
They because it's only one part of it. I tell you, I believe the main thing is the self hatred. Economics is part of it, but I believe that because they have taught us to hate each other, it's not just economics. It is not just economics.
It's
It's
not.
it's like it's a
It's
psychology.
psychological.
It's a psychology that we have that we don't deserve any better. Here's an example that I have. My fraternity has a house in the Mount Vernon area. What we do, we try to clean up the area and make it to give people examples of positive black men in the community. And the area that we are on Mount Vernon is a very rough area, bad area. What we see is they tear the property up, they throw stuff on the ground, they don't take care of the property. I believe that's psychological. I
It
believe that
is.
they feel that they don't deserve better. They're
It is.
so used to being in a situation like that, they continue to perpetuate it, and they don't feel that they deserve any better. They told us, we black men, y'all don't belong here, because we were positive, we were professional, and we still do reach out to them. But they told us, you don't belong here. Now, come on, man.
Hmm. I think it's a deep-seated generational trauma. And it's like having a low self-esteem and nothing can lift you out of it because you believe you are worthless. You don't think you deserve better. You don't aim higher. You have no aspiration.
Where'd it come from? It came from when they brought us over here. They taught us to hate everything that looked like us. We have never received any type of counseling or anything to turn that stuff around. We have not. We're still suffering generationally from that kind of mentality. And it does exist. I agree with you 100%. There are a lot of individuals from our community that believe that they are not worth anything. They would never admit it, but if you really got down to the bottom of it and the things that they're doing, they show all the signs of worthlessness, that they believe that. And they're intimidated when you try to put them in an arena with the majority people. They don't think they can compete with them. But I believe that it's up to us as professionals and successful Black people to go back and educate them and be the example. Look, if I can do it, you can do it. And not just say, I made it, you got to make it on your own. We cannot have that mentality.
We need to have that community approach to it. I'm a brother's keeper.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's
100%, 100% agreement.
yeah. And that's something I've noticed within the Black African American community is that if one generation can break that barrier, it's easier for the next generation. The problem is how to get that one person to break that barrier for the generation. Once the barrier has been broken, maybe one person went to college, got a good paying job, move out of that lifestyle, it's easier to lift up the next generation and not going back to depending on welfare, living in poverty, and expecting things to get better without actually having to work hard for it.
Yeah, because in my generation, my family, it was an embarrassment to you would be on welfare and not graduating from school. And my grandmother and I'm the third generation that went to college. I'm not the first. And a lot of my colleagues around me, I'm the third lawyer in my family. I'm the my grandmother was one of the first African Americans to graduate from Ohio State, and I understand the value of education, and we didn't believe that it was okay to be on welfare. It was an embarrassment to do something of that nature. So we did not do that. So but and that we had generations that uh we had generations that I'm third, and I have other generations behind me. My son and my other family members have become lawyers and have gone to college now. That my grandchildren are in college now. So, but that's what we have to show as an example. We cannot just say talk about it and not go back and be examples to the community. We have to give back. And to me, I have the biggest problem I have with my profession is we don't do that enough. We have a Black Bar Association. I don't see them in the Black community being examples and helping individuals in the community. I'm a member of the John Mercer Langston Bar Association. I need to see the John Mercer Langston Bar Association on Mount Vernon Avenue, on Livingston Avenue. I need them to be seen out here so these people can say that, look, they can do it, I can do it. They can do it, I can do it. How about that?
Yeah, how do we as Black professionals, get involved one on one with some of these young men? Because some of the contacts that I have had with young Black men are when they're in trouble. And with some of these kids, you help them get as low, maybe get the kids dismissed, get them a sweetheart sentencing, but then you try to keep up with them, but you can't. How can we go into the community and be accepted?
What we have to do is create ways to go in the community, things that we can do in the community, organizations that we're involved. We should be. My main way I do it is through my fraternity. We one of the ideas to build the house in the community where we are is that we got involved in. Then we have programs to bring the people from the community and get them involved and giving them stuff, uh, being examples on how you give as opposed to take from the community, things that you are doing positive. And one of the biggest, I believe, is positive things just to let them see Black men that are doing positive things and are not out here selling drugs and being predators to the community. Because one of that, if you don't see, you do better because you know better, because you give exposure to. And a lot of the young individuals in those communities don't get to see people that are doing positive things. What they see is the negative stuff. And they believe that's the only way they can make it. So what we have to do, if you're serious about it, you can find a way to get out there in the community. You have the Big Brothers stuff and the mentoring them, but we have good judges that are involved, and they have allowed us to go into the detention centers and do programs. I've done those, going in there and because if you realize 95% of the people in the juvenile detention center are African American boys, young boys. 95%. Can you imagine that? That's terrible. But what
It
we
is
should be
terrible.
doing is, once this pandemic is over, we should be doing is going in there, because I've gone in there and done programming. We've gone in there and done programming, talked to them and everything. But the challenge is can't just do it one time. You got to follow up with them. And these kids are so smart. They know if you're for real or if you're just faking. They know it. They can
Yeah, they
sense
know.
it.
They know
They
because
know.
they've been raised on survival and they've been raised not to trust, especially
Mhm.
if you're a black man wearing suit. They feel like you're not like them.
And no question about it. I told you, they told us we don't belong there until they got to know us. And we started interacting with them. And they still try to damage our property, break into our house, because they really don't understand how we need to be coming together as a community. And they are so used to being predators against each other. And it's just so unfortunate how the self-hatred that we had.
So we have a lot of reprogramming to do. And now, talking about criminal reform and police reform, we saw what happened on January 6th at the Capitol, how the police restrained themselves and handled the protesters and rioters the way they wouldn't have handled black people. A lot of people have raised hell about that. What do you have to say?
It was totally a different approach on how they handled those people on January 6th, as opposed to, if you could imagine, if they were all black people, even with the Black Lives Matters protest that they had, and how they were armed and ready for them to stop them in any way with force. You see how they, when the Black Lives Matters protests came out there compared to January 6th, they were taking selfies with these people. I even saw where they removed the fencing and allowed them to come in. And they were giving tours to them. And one person was killed. Unfortunately, anytime somebody's killed, on January 6th. But if you could imagine if black people, how they would have handled them and how many arrests would have been done immediately. So they wouldn't have had to go around rounding up people. They wouldn't have had to do that. See, they allowed these people to leave, and now they have to try to find everybody. It would have never happened. There was a double standard, and everybody knows it and sees it. And if we don't continue to be in an uproar at that, that's a prime example on how they treat people differently. Prime example.
Exactly. And everyone can see it now. So to me, it shows if you can treat people who are actually violent, armed with guns, they even kill the police officer and they let them go. How much more you treat unarmed black people as if they are criminals. And sometimes we end up dead just because we have a routine encounter with the police. So it means that the police are capable of treating people nicely, but does it actually depend on their color?
It shouldn't depend on their color. They do have the ability to try to de-escalate as opposed to using lethal force. There's no question about that. They have the ability to that. But see, if you look at the standard and the law that is behind the mentality of the individuals, you're looking at qualified immunity. And why qualified immunity is a standard in a civil action where it talks about if these people, what is the standard in your community? If you feel that you are in fear of harm, you are allowed to use lethal force. And they don't shoot you to wound you, because I've had forums talking to these police officers, bringing the police officers, they shoot for the body mass. They don't shoot to wound you because they want to eliminate the threat from you. So they want to eliminate you. But they do have the ability to de-escalate. That's one of the things that they should be training more of and require, instead of using the crutch with qualified immunity and saying that they were in fear of harm, teaching them how to de-escalate situations. In this January 6th, they didn't do a good job at it, but they didn't use lethal force either. So they were
They didn't.
attempting to try to de-escalate, but these
Yeah,
people were just too crazy
yeah.
to stop doing what they were doing. They knew what they were intending to do and what they were going to do.
And they ran them over. And the problem that we've been having when officers get involved in situations like that is that either they don't get charged, or when they get charged, they don't get convicted. So where is justice?
Well, that's one of the things that our new Franklin County prosecutor said, that he was going to start making sure that there's a fair presentation of cases against police officers before the grand jury. Now, it caused the uproar. If you look at today's, it was in Saturday's,
I read it in the
January.
papers. Yes.
It's terrible. But they got mad at him because he told the truth.
He's
And they
been
don't
saying
like,
it all along.
they've been hiding behind the shield of these cases being presented by biased people in front of the grand jury. They've been hiding behind that, knowing that they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna do it. He's been saying it when he was on this show. He said it,
Okay, well,
and
now I
it's a
want to
new
see
sheriff
it.
in town.
I want to see it before you can. I hear stuff all the time. I'm of the campus. I can see better than I can hear.
Yeah,
So
I'm not
I want to
even.
see what he's going to do. I
Yeah,
heard
I'm.
him. I know he said it, but that's, I want to see it. It's going to come because he's got two right now that are they should be presented for criminal charges.
Yeah,
Every shooting by the police has to be presented to the grand jury. everyone. Now let's see
Very,
how
very
they do.
true. Yes. And you've been, we've established how long you've been doing this. Do you have like a particular case that you know that, but for your client being black, if that if everything is fair, they will have received either maybe a fair trial or maybe not get convicted. Do you have an example of that case you can give us?
I've been in cases that it was blatant that because my client was black, and one in particular, I was in a Athens County, and it was a rape charge. It was a black male and a white female, and these cases it was over. Now, how these things were so biased against them, and now I've seen examples like that. Um, my challenges here in Franklin County, one of the challenges we have is we don't get enough people of color, black people, brown people on the juries. It's getting more now because of, they select the people to be on juries from the voters registration voter and if we're not voting, if we're not registering to vote, it not only doesn't get people that want to properly represent you in public office, they don't get an opportunity to be one of the jurors of your peers. And if you ever think that you go in there and see jurors of your peers, it's amazing. And these my clients look at these jurors and say, "My goodness, these aren't my peers," and they aren't.
Hmm.
Think about what the law says. We are entitled to be tried by jurors of our peers. And if you look at the makeup of these juries, most of these juries, when you go in front of them on these criminal cases, it is nowhere near any of their peers. Most of the crimes that people are being prosecuted, the age group, the demographic, African Americans from, I would say from now it's getting younger, but it would be from 16 to 35. I think after 35, they get tired of going back and forth. But if you look at them, and if you look at the jurors that are coming from the voter registration and the type of people that are, none of them are their peers.
No.
They're not going to get a fair shot with that.
Yeah. Can't we, part of the reform, can it be even the way jurors are summoned or jury is selected instead of using the voter roll? And we know historically, Black people have been disenfranchised for a long time, and most people have lost hope. They don't even register to vote because, just as we said, if you don't have hope that your vote means something, why do you bother registering to vote? Can't
Right.
you start using the BMV roster, which might be
Well,
much more
and
inclusive?
I think they do that also. I think that, but I think, but we still have issues with getting our driver's license. Now, we have problems with that. So, but I think it would be better. It would be a broader selection of people if we solely use the the driver registration as
Yes,
opposed to
BMV.
doing the voting registration. It would be much more fair.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Mr. Pot. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And if people want to reach out to you, can you give them your contact number or address where they can reach out to?
They can reach me at 614-228-2154. That's my telephone number. My email address is Byron Potts at msn.com. BYRON POTTS at msn.com. And if you, my website, www.blpots.com, very active in the community. Google me. You can get in touch with me. You can go on my web page and send me an email, and we will respond back to you.
Thank you again for coming on the show.
All right. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. And for those of you watching at home, thank you for joining us. Stay safe. Until next time, stay safe. Thank you.
All right. You too.